I don't know about you, but I'm finding it very hard to find the same wine that I used to buy pre COVID 19 days. This pandemic is really affecting a lot of industries, and one of those industries is the wine industry. And also on this episode, we're going to be talking about wine trends. Are you drinking something different that you weren't drinking when you started your wine journey? Well, we're going to be talking about that and so much more on this episode of The Average Wine Enthusiast. Hi there, everybody. My name is Mike LaPlante, and I'm the Average Wine Enthusiast. And speaking of enthusiasts, I saw a graphic on social media. I think it was on Instagram. I follow Wine Folly, which is, you can find them at winefolly.com. They're an educational outfit that will teach you a lot about wine. They sell everything from books to charts to glasses and other tools to help you enjoy and learn more about wine. And one of these graphics that she posted that landed in my social media was this piece here where they have five wine drinkers, and it has to do with wine knowledge. And as you can see, the first one is a woman there who is ignorant, and she just wants to get drunk on wine. That's probably not what anybody really wants to do. And then there's the beginner, and she likes to drink red wine, and I'm sure that's where a lot of people start on their wine journey. That's where they begin, and that's why they're called beginners. And then sometimes it takes a turn for the worse, and they'll drink lots of red wine, and then they'll hop on one specific type of wine, and they like it. Then they'll move on to something else that they don't like that as much, and so they become stuck on one type of wine. And you can see the woman here says, I'll only drink Pinot Noir, and she's a snob. And I don't think people want to be known as wine snobs. Some people do, but for the most part, snob is not a very endearing term, that's for sure. And then you have the next person who is an enthusiast, and that's what I like to call myself, and I like to try all kinds of different wines, and that really helped me put into perspective my own place in the wine world. I really feel as though I am an enthusiast, and I would like to try as much different wine as I possibly can to make informed buying decisions, and to maybe pass that information along to folks like you. And then once you get to a certain point, like the person who runs Wine Folly, her name's Madeleine Paquette, and she is definitely an expert in wine. She's also an artist too. She's a multi-talented woman, and as you can see here, she's an expert, but all the way back to the beginning. Let's just get drunk on some wine. So that brings us to another point that I wanted to bring up, was the fact that all wine will get you buzzed, or make you feel good, and that's why we drink wine. Many of the times that we do drink wine, we want to feel good, and it's a good socializing thing to do. And so what you feel like after you have this good feeling, this buzz, or even if you get drunk on wine, which I don't recommend, is either you feel really horrible, or if you're drinking really good wine, you don't feel as bad. And that's another reason why I try to steer people towards good wine. Not just because it tastes good, not because it's got lots of body and all this kind of other stuff. If you drink a decent wine, you won't feel the effects of the alcohol as much the next day. Just a little tip there. So a couple topics that I wanted to touch on today in this episode is one is the wine trends that are occurring in the industry right now. For whatever, there's different pressures on the wine industry right now, just like there's different pressures on all kinds of industry. But trends, just like fashion or cars or whatever, they're always changing. And having been focused long enough in wine, I can now see the difference in trends. It's just like seeing the bottom of my pants getting hugged onto my ankles to wearing bell bottoms, the same kind of thing. You can say, hey, I remember when I was wearing this. Well, I remember, I remember that the trend was towards big, fruity, Skittle tasting wine, big, jammy red wines, which, a lot of people can easily attach themselves to because they taste good. But I think there's enough people now drinking wine and appreciating the differences in wine that they realize that there's more to wine. So that, I believe, is making the trend go to less jammy, fruity type of wines to more complex wines, like old world wines. So old world wines tend to not be as full-bodied. They usually are medium to full body, and they are more complex. There's different layers as opposed to, let's say, a Merlot coming out of Napa Valley. You're going to get, slam bam, strawberry jam, cherries, and oak. And those flavors are all going to have some kind of overlap on top of them. Whereas opposed to some of the old world wines, and even new world wines, are now going towards old world blending methods because they realize that this is where the trend is going. I think it's part of it started when a lot of wineries started producing Syrah, and it was sold as its own varietal. And of course, Syrah is a huge grape in France, where they blend it with, depending on where you're at in France, Grenache and Mourvedre. So that is a type of wine that is now trending, is Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre, otherwise known as GSM wines, which I'm not a big fan of attaching a 3-letter acronym onto a type of wine. It just kind of, I don't know. It takes a little bit of the romance out of it. I'm not sure, but it does something to me when I hear GSM. So, like I say, I think it started with the Syrah, and people started appreciating the complexity of the Syrah grape. It has some fruitiness to it, but yet there's a lot of more earthy tones, and there's more complexity in it, in so much that it really accentuates where it is grown, and the topography and the terroir of the grape itself. So I have a bottle here of a GSM wine. It is Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre. It's called Tassalé, and it's made from old vines. It's a French wine, and it does not give me the percentage of each. I like that when they do that. But on the back of the bottle, it says, a delicious, dense, ruby wine with notes of red and black cherries. Back to the cherries. But the next thing is earth. That's what it says. Black cherries, earth, and spice. Nothing about fruit. Pepper, and a touch of Provençal garrigue. What is garrigue? Garrigue is the stuff that is growing around the grapes. In Burgundy, the garrigue oftentimes is mustard. They grow mustard around the grape vineyards there. And in the Rhone Valley, I believe, is a lot of lavender and sage. So that's part of the garrigue, but it isn't necessarily a planted thing like mustard and sage and lavender. Oftentimes it's just the natural occurring plants that happen to be growing in the area. So all that has to do with the earth. It's the stuff that's growing that isn't fruit based. And these types of notes in your wine really are more well defined. So as opposed to trying to pick out a raspberry from a strawberry in your wine, it's much easier to pick out a tomato leaf and topsoil, or spices or peppers or stuff like that. Those are more well defined and easier to really get the sense of complexity in your wine, and it just makes for a really enjoyable drinking experience. So yeah, that's where we're going as far as wine trends. I think the focus on big jammy red wines is being taken away by the GSM wines, as they call them. Can we think of another name besides GSM? Let me know down below in the comments. GSM just doesn't do it for me. Okay, another topic I wanted to touch upon was the supply of wine. As we all know, we're in the middle of a pandemic here, and some folks are getting through it better than others. When I say folks, I mean different countries are dealing with it in different ways. And the supply chain of a lot of stuff is being affected. There's, lots of people are not working right now because of this pandemic, and the conditions that employers have don't make it possible that they can continue doing whatever they're doing. And wine is one of those industries that I believe, and the distribution of wine, as far as that goes, is definitely being affected by the pandemic. So we have this, I wouldn't say there's a shortage of wine so much, but there's a shortage of selection. So the stuff that you would, someone like an enthusiast like me who's trying to drink as many different kinds of wine as I possibly can, I'm having a hard time finding wines from specific areas, more specifically Italy and in France. There's areas there that I hear about them, I read about these specific wines that I know I've seen before, but now I'm not seeing them at all. And there's even, wines I've had in the past from areas that I'm not seeing at all again. Whereas, in the LCBO, where we buy a good chunk of our wine, you tend to see wines on a yearly basis. You'll see once this one winery releases their wines, you see them on the shelf, and you scoop them up because you like it, and it's not going to be around till the following year. Well, those wines just they're not there, not all of them. And now we're seeing wines that we may not have seen at all because people are doing whatever they can to fill the shelves of their wine stores. So that's kind of an interesting thing. You're kind of forced into maybe drinking something that you may not have had the opportunity before. But like I said, the selection is way down. And I'm kind of curious if you folks are seeing that yourself. And if you are, how you're dealing with it, please let me know down in the comments below. So I guess that's going to do it for this episode of the show. I'd like to thank all of you for watching the show. If you know someone who's into wine just as much as you are, who sat around and watched a YouTube video on wine, if you think you know someone who is somewhat like you, let them know about the show, and please subscribe. Also, I'd like to give a big shout out to the Big Organ Trio for letting me use their music in this show. Until next time, folks, thanks a lot again for watching. My name is Mike LaPlante, and I'm the Average Wine Enthusiast. Salute!